Welcome to the Leadership Art Podcast. I'm your host, Art Robbins, and it's great to have you join us. The Leadership Art Podcast features insightful conversations with industry leaders who lead with purpose. Here, you will discover practical insights, powerful lessons, and everyday inspiration to elevate your own impact, whether you are leading now or preparing to step up. We want to inspire you to be the best leader you can be. And today's guest is Kendall Berg, executive career coach, speaker, and author of Secrets of the Career Game, 36 Strategies to Get Ahead in Your Career. Kendall helps high-achieving professionals rise into leadership by mastering the hidden rules of corporate advancement. Through her signature coaching programs, she equips ambitious leaders with the tools needed to move and succeed on the fast track. Her philosophy is simple. Career success isn't just about working hard, it's about knowing how to play the game strategically and authentically. Kendall, welcome to Leadership Art.
Thanks so much for having me, Art. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am too, and this is a great topic to be talking about because I think all our listeners are very interested in their careers. And
Would hope so.
I hope so too. Well, seriously, I think that's one of the key reasons they listen. And the rules of career management are so different these days than they've ever been. So I'm really excited in talking to you and hearing your insights and strategies on how to navigate through that all.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm really excited to share. I think I tend to be a very tactical person. I like to drive action. So definitely looking forward to jumping into it.
Great. Well, I think a good place to start, I always like the guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. And I'd be very interested in knowing the background and why you're so passionate about careers.
Yeah, so I think like so many people had a career that almost felt kind of accidental. So I'm a very tactical, technical person. So I studied mathematics. I started my career as a data scientist and data analyst, very in the weeds tactically, and worked with executives very early on in my career. So I started working for a CFO fresh out of college, worked for an executive team pretty much thereafter. And what I found along my own career journey is that in the very junior levels, being tactically proficient was a huge advantage. I could do a lot of work, I could produce a lot of output, and it helped me kind of move up into middle management rather rapidly. And then I got stuck because all of the skills that got me there weren't going to get me to the next level, as so many people talk about, right? I went from being tactically proficient and an expert to managing people and dealing with leadership in a different way, where I was trying to advocate for myself, my team, our projects. And I had a director who I worked alongside at the time, had a lot of respect for, really looked up to him. And at about 5 years stuck in middle management, he pulled me aside and he said, "Listen, everybody loves having you on their team. You do a great job. You get so much done. Nobody likes you. And
Oh,
until you figure
wow.
out
He
that,"
was brutally frank, wasn't he?
he was super direct. And
Wow.
I have the type of personality where that doesn't bother me much. And I am eternally grateful for this conversation looking back. At the time, a little harsh, right? Definitely took my lunch break that day to go
I
like
bet.
blow off steam. And he was like,
I
"Nobody
might have
likes
taken a
working with you,"
sabbatical, not just a lunch break
right?
after hearing
He's
that.
like, "Nobody likes working with you. And until you figure that out, you're not going to move up."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay, I have two options here. I can be defensive. I'm super likable. I'm really nice. I'm really great," right? Which is what we all want to say. Or I can assume that there is truth in this, that I need to make a change and figure out what I need to do next. So I said, "Where do I go from here?" He said, "I have no idea, but there's somebody I work with in the company who used to have the same reputation as you, and now she's a VP. Go spend some time with her. Maybe she can help."
Oh,
And
by the way, Kendall, just to
yeah.
clarify, when you say you're at middle management, when you had this
Mhm.
conversation, what was your level and what was your general responsibilities?
Absolutely. So I was a manager title. I was
Okay.
hoping to get promoted to a senior manager position, but I had just taken over a director's team.
Okay.
So I had about 15 people who reported to me. The person who had been in my role before was a director who had then just gotten promoted to senior director. And yet I was a manager overseeing these 15 people. And I ran basically all operations and analytics for a division of a bank.
Got it. Got it.
And so I reported up into a VP who oversaw operations and analytics and marketing. And then they reported up to the president. So I had a pretty large scope. I was working with 500 people on a daily basis. And I had just been so frustrated because everybody kept saying, "Oh, you're doing great. Oh, you're so good at your job. Oh, this
Mhm.
project was excellent." And yet every promotion cycle kind of came and went and
And
nothing.
just hearing you describe that, it sounds like in a way they were putting you in a position that was promotable. It was a
Mhm.
director's position. It was higher and broader responsibility and exposure than the average manager
Yeah.
position. So it sounded like you were being positioned
Yes.
for that higher position.
Yes, but with no pay, with no title, right? And I think that this is something that so many
Right.
listeners can relate to
Mhm.
is where do you draw the line with a stretch position
Mhm.
between being like, well, this is great. I'm in a position to get to a director level. This job clearly has the scope for promotion. I'm, being stretched in new ways, challenged in new ways. However, it's not happening. And so I ended up meeting with her. She was very helpful. She's like, listen, I need you to make more small talk. I need you to care more about people, like basic people EQ things that I was just lacking.
Mhm.
And from that conversation, I really built a framework for myself. So, like I said, I'm tactical. I like A plus B equals C. I want to know what I need to do. And so I created a template for how I write my emails. I created a template for how I run a meeting. I created a template for how I solicit feedback. I created a template for how I give feedback. I created all these tactical structures because my communication, well intentioned, was not being received well.
Okay.
And I wanted to fix the problem. So I created all these templates and then I got promoted 5 times in 6 years. So I
Wow.
was offered a CFO-ship before I was 30. I was put over large teams. I held multiple director and VP roles. And I became almost like the corporate dumping ground for low performers because my leadership would go, well, she used to be awful and she's good now. So we'll give all these people to her. She'll fix them. And in a lot of cases, I did. I would
You
take low
did. Well,
performers.
what do you think the key ingredients were that you put in the templates? I mean, the templates are a
Mhm.
way to discipline yourself to do
Mhm.
the right things, but you still need the right things, right? You still need those
Yeah.
key ingredients. So what were some of those?
I think the big thing is we all tend to have tunnel vision
Hmm.
and we tend to think about what we need first, right? It's very natural.
Hmm.
But in a corporate setting, most people want you to think about them. And so what was built into my template is what I call the acknowledge and respond framework, which is when someone is sharing a perspective with you, asking you a question, giving pushback on an idea, presenting their own approach, whether you agree with them or not, building in a template of acknowledgement before you respond to them changes the narrative in communication. So I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
I say, the sky is purple, and Art goes, no, the sky is blue. And instead of going, no, Art, the sky is purple, like I said, which is what I want to say because I'm short on time, I'm trying to be efficient, I believe the sky is purple. If I say, hey, Art, I completely understand why you would think the sky is blue. I've also seen many paintings and drawings where the sky is depicted as blue. However, in my research, I found that the actual color schema that goes into the sky comes out as closer to an indigo, and it's just diluted through the clouds and it's actually purple. None of this is true. By the way, if you're listening thinking I'm crazy, I recognize that. Okay. But if I take that quick moment to acknowledge
Hmm.
art,
Yes.
and say, hey, I completely understand why you would think that way. I understand your perspective. I understand where you're coming from. That's a valid point. Just that before you address your perspective is enough that now Art goes, she listened. She does think that that was valid. She's not discounting my opinion. She's just offering an alternate. But what so many people do in corporate is we go straight to the response.
Right. Right.
And so, what I did in a lot of my templates is I built in this framework of acknowledgement. How do you acknowledge in an email? How do you acknowledge when someone's being contrary to you? How do you acknowledge when you're giving feedback? How do you acknowledge when you're receiving feedback? And that was something that I didn't do very naturally. And I don't think people teach it. right? Some people do it very naturally. They go, "Oh, that's a
Mhm.
great point. Thanks for saying that." But a lot of people don't. And especially the more tactically proficient you are, you think you don't have to because you're like, "But art's wrong."
This really raises a common theme on so many of my prior episodes is that the soft skills aren't taught. You know,
Mhm.
people do well initially or early in their career because they have the technical skills or they have
Mhm.
the work ethic. But in all the MBA programs and even in the corporate development programs, they're not teaching you the soft skills. And at
Yeah.
some point in that career journey, the importance of the soft skills overtake the importance of those technical skills, of the work ethic skills.
Yeah. 100% art. And even if they do teach them, they teach them vaguely.
Hmm.
It's important to improve your communication. And then we're on to the next thing. And you're like, great, but what does that mean? What does
Hmm.
improve your communication actually mean when I'm conversing with someone? And so this is what made me so passionate about what I do now is there were such simple tweaks. Acknowledge before you respond. Acknowledge in your emails. Solicit feedback regularly. These easy things that I could have been doing all along, but nobody ever told me to do. That when I started teaching them to people, suddenly low performers are getting promoted, low performers are getting high reviews, low performers are, becoming directors. And I'm so passionate about the fact that I just wish somebody had told me instead of waiting. And somebody did, right? Very directly. But somebody did tell me, like, hey, you've got to get better at this. And I see it so often. Clients will come to me and they're like, my boss says I'm great, but I haven't gotten promoted in 6 years. And I'm like, okay, then let's be real. We're not great. So
Hmm.
let's figure out what it is we're not great at so we can fix it so we can get promoted rather than us putting our head in the sand saying, but my boss said it's fine. And your boss going, no, you're doing great. And so that's what really helped is I catapulted my own career, became very successful in my corporate job. And then I turned around and was like, I'm going to help other people learn these frameworks so that they don't get stuck, so that they don't get frustrated. And now I have about a 70% promotion rate within 6 months of working with me because so many of my clients who come to me, they're already doing the technical. They already have the work ethic. They're already ready to make progress. They just haven't figured out the soft skill piece. And that's all leadership is. At a certain level, you stop working and all you're doing is navigating corporate politics. All you're doing is advocating with leadership. All you're doing is sitting in meetings. And so building that skill is what really allows you to have kind of that hockey stick in the executive levels, and really help set you apart from your peer set because at some point your skills will exceed and allow you to be more successful in those larger settings.
As I hear your story, the other thing that I find very interesting about it is you figured out how to navigate the corporate game where you were. You're doing very well. You suddenly got on a fast track, if not a hyperspeed track, and you decided to leave corporate and you
Yeah.
decided to put on a entrepreneurial hat and do something on your own. I mean, that takes a lot of courage to
And I
make that
will
kind of a leap.
say I did both for an extended period of time. So if you're listening to this and you're in corporate and you're like, maybe I want to get out of corporate, I made sure that my side hustle worked first. So I did
Mhm.
4 years
Okay.
of corporate and my company being run in
Okay. You were
parallel.
dual
And
tracking, basically.
yes, and I will say my executive team is really supportive, and not everybody's going to have that situation, right? I was really lucky. My COO and my CTO were like, "This is great. Will you train our teams while you're training these external people?" Right? It was a very supportive and engaging environment, which really helped me. Um, but I definitely, it is always that risk of like, you figure out the corporate games. Like, did I figure out the entrepreneur game? We'll find out shortly, right? And so I think that it's been an interesting journey, but for me, it felt very much like a God calling of like, hey, you were terrible at this. I was,
Mhm.
right? I had to learn how to be good at it if I wanted the success that I wanted. And being able to then take those lessons and go, hey, Susie, who's really great and a good person and good at her job, but stuck, here's how you can replicate that for yourself. Or, hey, John, I have a client right now. His name is not John, but he'll be John for today, who is a data scientist, really technical, really great, thrown into all these leadership meetings. And he's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to tell them what my model does or explain to them why I need more people or sell to them why they need us. Like that's not something I've been taught. I can build a model, a really great one. And so how do you build those skills for leadership? So it's a long story, long, but that was my journey in corporate was, I started technical, I got to middle management, I got really stuck. I was given very direct but very helpful feedback from somebody I respected, and I really used that to push myself onward and upward, and then turned right around and went, okay, everybody out there who feels the same agony that I do, let's fix it. And how do we build frameworks and repeatable processes that allow you to be scaling the way that you want to?
No, I'm so glad you shared that with us. I think that's going to inspire a lot of people. And for those that are struggling, they'll realize, hey, there's a way for me to stop struggling and take control of this. So let me ask you, I mean, you're in a successful career coaching business now. If someone approaches you, like the data scientist you talked about, and they say, I'm stuck, I want to do better, I want to get on the fast track, what are some of the things you tell them they need to do to get started on that
Yeah.
journey?
Yeah. So the way that all of my clients start is we start with personal branding and career strategy. So what that looks like tactically is you will only be successful in your career if you know what differentiates you.
Mhm.
And
Okay,
at a certain,
self-awareness,
yeah.
basically.
And
Mhm,
at a certain level, everybody's got the same technical skills,
mhm,
right? Everybody's got a similar background. Everybody's been in work for the similar amount of tenure, right? At some point, your technical stops being your differentiator. So identifying what is it that makes you really unique? And then how do you talk about that in interviews and your work and your performance reviews in a way that builds a consistent branding? So I'll use myself as a personal example. My personal brand for corporate is I'm the person you put in the black hole to bring organization to chaos. I do this by building the next generation of great leaders and repeatable, scalable processes for the organization.
mhm.
That's been my brand longer than I'd like to admit, 15
And
years.
then it's very succinct, it's very powerful, and it's very outcome
And
oriented.
it tells you what you need to know about me because if you're
Mhm,
recruiting Art and you're looking for somebody to lead as VP of operations,
mhm,
do you need somebody who you can toss into black hole areas where nothing makes sense and have them organize it? If you don't, I'm not the right hire for you anyways, because
mhm.
my special skill is not going to add the value that you need. But if
Right.
you
You're,
are
you're
looking
you're
for
not the
that,
right person for a steady state operation.
exactly. But if
Right.
you're hiring somebody to come in a strategy team and overhaul the change management process for your company, I'm the right fit because you can throw me in there and I'm going to make it work, right? And by knowing what sets me apart, I can sell myself in an interview more effectively. I can tell you what makes me unique.
Mhm,
I can also effectively do my job. And the importance of a personal brand is then when everybody goes to talk about me in a performance review, or they're discussing my promotion, or they're discussing giving me more team members. If everybody in that room agrees that I'm really good at being dropped in a black hole and figuring it out, it's a much easier conversation about why I deserve to be promoted or why I'm good at my job. If everybody, even if they all have positive opinions of me, if they're all different, it's very hard to get alignment. It's very hard to get the whole team to go, she is really great. She does deserve X. But if we all agree that that's what I'm good at and you need more of that, it's a really easy conversation. So I always start with my clients, we build that personal brand. What makes you unique? What sets you apart? And then we build your career strategy. And the way that I do that, and you guys could do this listening, highly recommend, get a sheet of paper.
mhm.
I have all my clients write out
All the
three
listeners
things.
get out the paper. Come on,
Yeah,
let's do it.
notepad, pen, both. Write out three things you're passionate about at work that are non-technical. So examples of this could be I'm passionate about every day looking different and getting to work on a multitude of different projects. It
Mhm,
could be the opposite of that. You could be like, I am passionate about having every day look exactly the same and knowing what to anticipate. That's cool. You could write, I'm passionate about getting to meet lots of people and build good relationships. I'm passionate about being valued for the work that I deliver and being able to get a sense of accomplishment from what I'm outputting. One of mine is I like to see the output and results of the work that I do,
mhm,
right? It's why I've always been on internally focused teams because externally, unless I go sit with a client, I can't really see the impact of what I'm building. But if it's internal, I could go hop over to somebody's desk and say, hey, how'd that work for you?
mhm,
So understanding what you're passionate about a work that's non-technical. Once you have your list of three, These become your criteria to take jobs.
Mm, got it.
So I have interviewed for roles that did not have all three of the things on my passion statements list. And I have said no, even if it was a higher salary, even if it was a higher title, because you're not going to be happy in that role long term.
Hmm.
And yes, job hopping has become more of a cultural accepted job strategy. But in a perfect world, you want to be in a role that you're really happy and that you're able to grow and develop within that position, not just, hey, I went in, I survived 12 months to put a stamp on my resume that I made it 12 months and then I'm jumping ship. We want to feel fulfilled while we're there. And so these passion statements become that criteria. So then we build a roadmap.
I just want to comment on that because I think, especially in this day and age, with some in certain positions, salaries are behaving crazy, and it's easy for people to job hop to
Mhm.
a significantly higher salary. And even if they have all these I mean, I've seen this over and over again. You probably have too. Even if there are all these red flags about making the hop, about the new position and uncertainties and warning signals. Oftentimes it's rationalized saying, well, I'm going to make 25% more. I'm going to make 50% more. I'll deal with that because I'm
Mhm.
making so much more money.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, all those dangers become a reality. The person's unhappy, he's miserable, might even get fired because their dissatisfaction translates to underperformance.
Yeah. It's so true. And I'm never going to tell somebody take less money in an economy like this one,
Mhm.
right? But there are definitely situations where I've had clients come to me and they're like, hey, this person's offering 25% more, but I hate the hiring manager. It doesn't meet my passion statements. It's just like a shiny title. And I said, great. What does that money buy you that's going to make you feel better about those things?
Mhm.
Because if the answer
Great
is
question.
nothing,
Right.
then it's not the right job. Now, if you have extenuating circumstances and maybe that job allows you to get a full-time nurse practitioner for your child that you need, and it allows you to take care of somebody who's under your purview that you like haven't been able to provide for before, and that's going to offset, hey, I can be hated by my boss as long as I can provide for these people, then maybe that's a trade-off you're willing to make, right? That's a personal call.
Mhm.
But so often we say, oh, but I could vacation to Aruba. And I'm like, no, you can't because you hate your manager. They're never going to let you take PTO and you're going to be miserable all the time. And you're going to spend your whole vacation in Aruba slamming your head against the door going, why did I take vacation? I have so much work to do. So it's it's not always worth it, the money trade-off, right? There are extenuating circumstances where it is. Um, but I do think if you understand your passion statements, then you're at least going in eyes wide open. And the last corporate job that I took, I'm really passionate about leading a team. And when I was offered the role, it was an individual contributor position. And my poor recruiter, I was like, "Hey, can I talk to the CTO just one more time? I just want to have a quick chat." And he's like, "Seriously, we just sent the offer." I was like, "I know. I just have like a few more questions I want to ask." And I met with him and I said, "Listen, I want to be super candid with you. If I'm not managing people, I'm not going to stay.
Mhm.
And I want to stay. I see the growth potential here. I see where you guys are going. I want to be part of what you're delivering, but that is a non-negotiable for me. And so I need to be aligned with you now. I don't want to take the role and leave in 6 months because I'm not happy. And that puts you in an even more difficult position and you're back to the recruiting board. But I also want to be honest that I need to be managing a team of people for me to feel fulfilled in what I do. What is the path to make that happen in this role?" And he was like, "We're actually doing a reorg and two roles are moving under this position. We just need this person in first for the reorg to take place." And I was like, okay, well, then that I could live with and I could take the role. I said, but I just didn't want to step in and be dishonest and say that this is going to be great, knowing that for me, I'm writing a ticket that's not going to be long term.
Right. You're
And
setting
there
the
was,
right expectations
yeah, and it was
up
a
front.
mutual
Yeah.
respect. It wasn't
Yeah.
a, hey,
Mutual
if you don't
respect.
give me people, I'm going to quit. It was a, hey, I want to be honest about what makes me have longevity at a company, what makes me happy. Is there a path to that in this role? Because if not, I don't want to take it and put you guys in a bad position. I'd rather go take a different offer. And it ended up being a great role. I was there for an extended period of time, almost 6 years. But I always talk about that, that like if I didn't know what my passions were and I had just taken that job and there hadn't been a path to getting a team, I'd have been miserable and I'd have left in 6 months.
Right. Now, again, emphasizing the importance of self-awareness. I'd like to sort of explore a slightly different angle because we're talking about people who are motivated to act on their career and
Mhm.
make changes. And you also mentioned the economy. I mean, we are in a strange economy
Yeah.
right now.
Mhm.
And it's not as predictable as it might have been. Getting better jobs, having new job opportunities appear isn't as certain as it once was. And you have a lot of people who are in positions that they're not happy with,
Mhm.
and but yet they're afraid to make a move
Mhm.
because of the uncertainty.
Yep.
And they're afraid to create what they may perceive as friction with their boss because
Mhm.
they're afraid it might put their current position at risk.
Mhm.
So, how do you approach that situation? There are a lot of people out there in that situation.
Well, I think there's a few things that come into play here, because every situation obviously is different. Being afraid to make a move only hurts the person who stays.
Hmm.
It doesn't hurt your boss who gets to keep mistreating you and keep getting output from you and keep going home whenever they want and doing their things. It
Hmm.
doesn't hurt the CEO of your company who probably doesn't know you exist. And even if they do know you exist, they're on their yacht in the summer isles or whatever it is they're doing and they're not upset about it. The only person who gets hurt when you stay in a position too long is you. And I actually, there's a whole secret about this in my book that I talk about. And it is your responsibility to take control of your career. Now, that being said, job markets, it's iffy, right? The economy is iffy. Let's be real. So, what are some things that you can do that will improve your situation? So, step one is learn to manage up your boss. Right now, again, this is situation dependent. If you're working for a really toxic manager who's throwing things at you and cursing you out, you're probably not going to manage them up to an effective staying position. Let's be honest. But if it's somebody who just maybe doesn't communicate the way that you prefer, or, they send you a lot of vague pings at 2 a.m. and you're like, I don't know how to respond to this, or working hours aren't aligned. If it's small things like that, there are things you can put in place to kind of manage them up. Hey, I'd love to understand your expectations of me in this situation, is one of my favorite questions. If I feel like a boss isn't liking me or they're not getting what they need from me, hey, what's your expectation of me? Help
Hmm.
me understand what it is you're looking for here. You can also, provide constructive feedback. So, one of my favorite ways to give feedback to a boss is to take personal ownership for it. So, hey, I've noticed you've been pinging me at 2 a.m. a lot. Unfortunately, that is during my sleeping hours.
Surprise, surprise.
I would love to be responsive to you. How could we create an appropriate window so that I can get back to you in a timely manner? Because I don't want to leave you on red. I'm taking personal ownership, even though it's something they're doing that's bothering me. But if they say, oh, well, when I message you, I don't expect you to respond until 9 a.m., you can say, great, so you don't mind me muting my Teams or my Slack while I'm asleep and getting back to you first thing in the morning. And they say, no, great, now we're aligned.
Yeah.
And you can shut that off and ignore it and not have to stress. Or maybe they say, oh, well, I just like to send all my thoughts. If you could just respond first thing in the morning, 5 a.m., that'd be great. Then we can say, hey, I appreciate that. However, I do have kids, I'm getting them off to the bus, and I want to make sure I have time to really digest what you're sending. Would 9 a.m. work, right? It opens the door for finding middle ground when we take ownership. If we go, hey, stop messaging me at 2 a.m., now we're being combative and we're putting our
You're
boss in a difficult
confrontational now.
position.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yep. And that's when your working situation gets worse, right? So taking personal ownership, I find, just kind of relieves some of that pressure. Now, so that's some of the managing up. Some of the other things you can do is look internally. I don't know why people don't do this. This is like where I start with every client is there another team internally you'd rather work for that
Hmm.
has a really great boss that works on really cool projects that does something different? You have more knowledge and more exposure to the cultures that exist within your company than you ever will when you apply outside.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So it's in your best interest. If Art manages a different part of marketing and you're in marketing and you're like, man, I hate my boss. My job is terrible. I can't keep doing this. Go get coffee with Art and say, hey, I've heard such great things about you. The projects we've worked on have gone so well. I'd love to learn more about what your team's working on. Love to learn about what problems you're trying to solve. Do you guys see that you may expand in the future months? How does your team look? Have a conversation. And if it's a good fit, and they have a position open, then you say, hey, I'd love to apply for that. I need to let my current manager know. Before I do that, is this a position that you believe I could be a good fit for? Right? Just ask the question. Because most people are afraid to tell their boss, hey, I'm going to apply for a job in arts team. And then if they don't get it, they're stuck. And the boss was already terrible. So have the honest conversation with Art first. They can't promise you the role, but they can give you an indication if it's going to be feasible or not. They
Yeah.
can tell you if they're hiring, they can tell you about their team, they can tell you about their culture. So moving internally tends to have a lot less friction than trying to move externally. And then the last thing I would say is if those two fail, then you do go to the job market. Now, I'm not a huge fan of quitting before you have a job lined up because it is very touch and go right now. What I am seeing an increase of, which I think is really interesting, and I think this is a big part of Gen Z influence, being honest, is people taking FMLA for mental health reasons
Hmm.
until they find a new job.
Right.
I am seeing that a lot more, like a lot more now than we did 5 years ago. Um, I have mixed feelings about it. I think it depends on the severity of the situation you're in, right? Again, if your boss is throwing things at you and cursing, like, yes, take
Yeah.
your FMLA for your mental health and find something else. Um,
Are
but I,
you seeing more incidents of what's called a quiet quitting or side hustling, where people are intentionally less engaged in their current job so they can position themselves for that next better job, that next perceived better job?
I don't feel like I see a ton of quiet quitting. I know there was a lot of narrative around this of like, oh, I'm just
Mhm.
going to do the bare minimum and log off. I think people who do the bare minimum at work are doing it all the time.
Mhm.
It's very hard for a high performer to do the bare minimum.
I
It
totally agree with
feels
you. Yeah.
really
Mhm.
uncomfortable to a high
Mhm.
performer to do the bare minimum. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to skip some meetings in order to go to an interview. I'm not saying that they might delay a deliverable to go, do some job applying. I'm not seeing as much of that, especially in the high performer space, the quiet quitting piece, as I think the narrative indicated. I am seeing a lot of people taking on multiple jobs,
Mhm.
like especially if your job is remote and it's data entry, maybe you don't sit on a lot of meetings, you're not very senior, picking up a second job that's also data entry and not very time sensitive and not very meeting oriented. I'm definitely seeing more of that pick up for sure. Again, I think it's a result of the economy, but I think with a lot of companies RTOing and going back to the office, it's not going to be as feasible to maintain that long term, right? I let an employee go a couple of years ago who very clearly had another job. And when I let him go, he's like, yeah, I kind of wondered how long it would take.
He was waiting.
It was the wildest interaction of my whole life. I was like, you, what? You're gonna try that again?
Yeah, there are
Um,
people like that, absolutely.
but I think if you're a high performer, you're not doing that
Right,
because it
right.
feels very unnatural and very uncomfortable. I think if you're a poor performer, if you like to do the bare minimum, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there is. I'm just saying those people are already working at that level. So it's not going down or going up too much.
Yeah.
But high
You
performers, I just hear a lot of yes menning. Like, yes, yep, we'll do that. Yep, we'll do that. A lot less emotional investment as opposed to time.
One of the key themes in everything you just talked about is at the end of the day, even if people are afraid to take these steps to improve their career, they need to own their career
Hmm.
because no one else is going to own it for you. It's not no longer the days of unending corporate loyalty to you,
Hmm.
where they're going to see you all the way through retirement. You need to own your career. You need to be self-aware. You need to know what your priorities are, and you need to take the steps to improve your situation, even if it's uncomfortable or painful.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it, it'll never happen.
Well, and what will happen is you'll get laid off, right?
Hmm.
So the situation you described where maybe the boss isn't super supportive of you, they give you relatively poor feedback, you're getting poor year-end reviews, they're not supportive of your growth, they're not getting you exposure or visibility. If you stay in that position, at some point, given the current corporate dynamics, you're going to be laid off. And then you'll be kicking yourself going, well, shoot, now I'm in the job market I didn't want to be in,
Hmm.
but I don't have a job lined up and I don't have a job that I'm in comfortably. And I didn't try to manage my boss and fix the situation. And I didn't network internally with other people and other teams. And I didn't go out to the
Yep.
market. And this is what I mean by the only person who gets hurt is you. There's no situation where your boss goes home and cries themselves to sleep at night because you didn't go find another job. Right? They might feel bad about laying you off. Most people don't like it. Some people do, but most people don't like it. But in all of these situations where I have clients who are in bad spots, and as a coach, it's interesting. You're like, have we thought about looking for something else? Have we thought about, do we want to look outside? And at some point, clients will tell me, like, no, I really don't. I just want to stay. And I'm like, okay. And we drop it. And without fail, within 6 months, they're laid off almost every single time. And it's painful to watch because I want you guys to be successful. And in the end, that's what hurts you is being too loyal or too fear of the change that you stay until it's over and then you're pushed out, right? Because one way or another.
Those are great points, Kendall. And there's another lesson that I think is coming out of this. This is a leadership podcast, and it's aimed at all levels of leadership.
Mhm.
We've been talking a lot from the employee's perspective and how they can improve their situation. But I think there's a lot of lessons in here for the bosses too, because I've seen so many situations where poor performance of a staff is not the fault of the staff. It's often the fault of the boss or the
Mhm.
fault of the leader
Yeah.
of that staff. And there are things that that leader can do to improve their leadership impact, which ultimately would improve the impact and performance of their team. And I think you made a point early on, which has actually been a mantra of this podcast, which is great leaders develop more great leaders.
Mhm.
And that really is a key differentiator. So
Yeah.
I think for the leaders out there who are listening that do have teams, they should be aware that if you have underperformers on the team, even if it's just one, take responsibility for that, take accountability for it, because it
Mhm.
might not be the fault of that individual. It
Yeah.
might be something you're not doing right or overlooking. There doesn't have to be malice involved. It just might be
Yeah.
it's not on your radar.
Yeah.
And to take some steps to try to help that person improve their situation and performance. It could be a
Yeah.
win-win for both of you.
Yeah. And people leave people, people don't leave companies,
Mhm.
right? People
Right,
leave bad
exactly.
bosses, full stop. And I always joke, if you worked for me 10 years ago, no, you didn't. She didn't know what she was doing. She learned a lot after that. Okay. And when I talk to leaders who are dealing with low performers, there's a couple things leaders
Sure.
can go do that will help. One is part of the problem is happening when you assign the work. Now, I use an acronym called CAGR when we are assigning work. And this stands for context. What is the context of what you're asking for? Why do you need it? Stop just saying, hey, can you send me this data? Tell them why. The outcome, what is it that you're expecting to receive or the output that you're expecting to receive? When is it due?
Mhm.
Right? So set a deadline. Everything you assign to someone should have a deadline, always, 100% of the time. It doesn't matter if it's fake, doesn't matter if you dreamed it up, doesn't matter if you made it up. Make sure you have a deadline. And then R is resources. Who do they go to for questions? What systems do they need to access? Who can support them in your absence? You are not always the answer to the resource question. They need to be able to go to other people and self-serve. So if you are assigning work with that every time, C for context, O for output, D for deadline, R for resourcing, and you've got that coder being consistent, you will have better return from your employees. So that's step one. Step two is when you do give coaching and you give feedback, if you're a leader, please listen to this. Deliver it thematically.
Mhm.
Don't nitpick people. We have a tendency as leaders, we see a bunch of different problems. A typo in an email, a mistake in a slide, a meeting invite that doesn't have all of the attendees on it. And instead of saying, hey, we need to work on your attention to detail,
Mhm.
the manager goes, hey, that email had a typo in it. And then a week later, hey, that PowerPoint had a mistake in it. Hey, that meeting didn't have so and so on it. And what happens is to the end employee, these feel like individual pieces of feedback that are easily correctable. But to the manager, it's a trend.
Mhm.
And so if we don't communicate to them and say, hey, I need you thematically to work on attention to detail, here's 4 examples of what that looks like to me, they're never going to get better because they think, oh, well, I fixed that email. Oh, well, I fixed that PowerPoint.
Right.
Oh, well, I fixed that
They're
meeting.
just checking the boxes as opposed to
Yes.
dealing with the root cause of the problem.
Yes, and the same is true with executive presence communication. Now, you need to give specifics. Don't just be vague and say, hey, we need to work on your executive presence. But if we say, hey, I need to work on your executive presence, there's a few meetings where I felt like you weren't engaged enough. And I'd like for us to build the skill where you're contributing more actively to the conversation, whether that's questions or that's body language or posture. Here's specific examples. And I also want to work on having you do more strategic presentations to leadership so that their perception of your executive presence improves as well. That is a thematic feedback that may have 4 or 5 different examples that go under it, but they all tie together to the same growth opportunity. So those would be 2 things. If you are a leader and you're listening to this and you're like, but I do have an underperformer, he's not doing what I'm telling him to do, make sure you're checking those 2 boxes. And then, yes, maybe it is out of your control. Maybe they are just lazy. Maybe they just don't want to work. Maybe they have a side hustle that they're focused on, right? There's extenuating circumstances. But making sure you're checking yourself with those 2 things first, I find really helps us self-evaluate as leaders. Are we doing right by our employees?
Those are excellent points.
I've been lucky to have a lot of mentors along the way. And then I've had business mentors who helped me build my business as well. But I would say if you're listening to this and that question catches you off guard, that should be the very first thing you do after this episode. Before you do your passion statements, before you work on your leadership skills, before you work on advocating for yourself or finding a new job, is find a mentor, whether that's a coach or that's a mentor in your company, because they will undoubtedly make a huge impact on how you are able to succeed long term.
Oh, that's great advice. Kendall, you gave us amazing advice and amazing insights here. I'm sure that people are taking tremendous notes about what their priorities are and their career strategy, and they may want to connect with you further. How can they do that?
So you can find me at thatcareercoach.net. Pretty easy. I'm also that career coach on pretty much every social media. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack. Find me there. It's a good way to get in touch with me and get some free advice and get connected if you're interested in the book or in coaching. But yeah, thanks so much for having me, Art. I felt like this conversation was really great.
No, it definitely was. And yeah, I may need to talk to you about some more stuff too.
Perfect. I love it.
That'd be great. Well, listen, thank you so much again for being our guest. And I also want to thank our listeners and our followers for joining us and for your continued support. So until the next episode of the Leadership Art Podcast, this is your host, Art Robbins. And remember, it's your lead.